Thank you very much, Senator. I think we'll have one short second round, just from myself and Senator Britt, and then we can wrap. Just a few final additional questions for you. First, I thought you acquitted yourself very well in the conversation with Senator Kennedy. It's fair for him to ask those questions, but it's also, fair to expect that secretaries are going to support administration position, even if it's not in their jurisdiction. Also fair to believe that every secretary is not going to be an expert on administration policy outside of their jurisdiction. Secretary McDonough would likely come and say he supports the new asylum rule, but we wouldn't expect him to be an expert in the asylum rule. But I appreciate Senator Kennedy's questions, but I appreciate the nature of your response. I have two additional questions for you. One, we put in the last budget the first ever specified funding for outbound inspections at the border, specifically targeting the arms trade and the cash that moves southbound into Mexico. And as you know, this is a very specific and understandable ask from the Mexican government, that if we are asking them to be much more serious about the flow of fentanyl north, that we should be much more serious about the flow of arms and cash, which facilitates that trade heading south. I don't know whether you have an answer for today or you can get us an answer, but I would like to get an update on the schedule of expenditure for those dollars. I'd like to know if we have begun those outbound inspections looking for illicit arms trade or illicit cash moving south across the border.
I will follow up with a detailed accounting, Mr. Chairman. Let me assure you that we are indeed very focused on the movement of funds and arms to the south because the cartels are being equipped with both. And so we are very focused on interdicting the movement of arms and cash.
Yeah, important to note that there is one gun store in Mexico. It's largely a store selling to the military, which is why upwards of 70% of the crime guns that are recovered in Mexico originate from the United States, and we should be expected to do much more about that. Lastly, on DRF, you've requested about $20 billion, which is the full amount that you can request that doesn't require a score from CBO. But my understanding is there's not going to be a lot of money moving from 23 into 24, so not a lot on top of that $20 billion, even if we were to authorize that full amount. Makes me a little bit worried that that number is not going to be enough for the coming fiscal year, and we're going to have to come back and do some emergency expenditure, which will be very difficult, sort of under the current circumstances in Congress. So are you confident that that $20 billion request is enough to be able to meet the needs in 24? Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball, but that looks like it's going to leave you a little thin.
Mr. Chairman, we're very worried about the condition of the DRF, of the Disaster Relief Fund, in fiscal year 23. In this particular year, and we're watching that very closely because of the increase in frequency and gravity of severe weather events, and also of the impacts, of course, on COVID, which have intertwined very closely with the use of the DRF. That is our best estimate of security for the Disaster Relief Fund, but I look forward to working with you on that assessment.